Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another round of sound. This is the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown on a very busy weekend in Pittsburgh sports. I'm Bob Pompeani. Thanks for joining us tonight. We have a lot to get into, including Notre Dame beating Pitt pretty good yesterday over at Acrisure Stadium. But the #1 topic tonight on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown will be a Steelers win. And it turned out to be a beatdown against the Cincinnati Bengals. With us to debate this whole situation with the Steelers and Pitt is our panel tonight. Brian Batko, Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, Ray Fittipaldo from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, Chris Adamski from the Pittsburgh Tribune-Review, and Trib Live. So we're going to talk about spitting. Not the game, spitting. But we'll do that a little bit later. First, Brian, I want to start with you. Quarterback situation, always going to be an interesting one. According to Adam Schefter, it looks like Aaron Rodgers has some sort of break in his left wrist. It's not his throwing hand. Let's just play a little game. If he's healthy, should he play? Will he play? Or do they go with Mason Rudolph?
If he's healthy, he should still be in there. I think I need to see more of the bad from him before I try to get more of the good from Rudolph, which he was okay today against the Bengals. I mean, the DK Metcalf back shoulder throw was great, got negated by a PI. Otherwise, he missed Metcalf near the end zone there, and a lot of dump-offs and checkdowns to Kenny Gainwell and let him do the heavy lifting against the Bengals defense that guys just cannot tackle. They can't do the most basic function of any defense. So that certainly helped Rudolph's day look a little bit better in the box score. But knowing Mike Tomlin and knowing what Aaron Rodgers has done to this point, last few games notwithstanding, I still think he would get a little bit more rope than this, but I don't know what's going on with the wrist. It was kind of a weird situation from the beginning.
He was questionable to return. They never rolled him out, so there was always the chance that he could come back in.
And he went to the locker room early, which I thought was weird. He went kind of straight
right
down the
the
tunnel. There were still 10 seconds left. They could have muffed a kickoff return or recovered a fumble or something or whatever, so clearly something wasn't right.
They're in shotgun so much, though, that I don't want to say the left wrist doesn't have anything to do with his ability to play, but there are some circumstances when you want your quarterback under center. That is a hard play if you have a wrist injury. So I would expect him to start the week questionable. I think they'll see how it progresses. But listen, Mason Rudolph does what he always does. He puts that team in positions to win. He's really good at his job. And if they do have to play him, I think everyone in that locker room is going to feel comfortable with that.
There's a degree of irony that for the first time Will Howard dresses, especially all the hoopla surrounding Will Howard amongst the fan base, that he was a snap away from actually being deployed. It was the first time since week 1 the Steelers had an emergency quarterback on hand too, and they almost, they were a snap away from losing their first two quarterbacks, especially whenever the starter wasn't on the sideline by all appearances, might not have been. I don't know how available it would have been if you could have came back or something, because you would think a left wrist, at least to finish a game in an emergency type situation, would have been available. So obviously we'll know a lot more, probably by tomorrow at some point, certainly at some point Tuesday, and as we get throughout the week to see. But yeah, I mean, if Rodgers, I think it's pretty clear, if he's clear to play, he's going to start the next game. It's just a matter of how much that can affect him. I don't know. I mean, it's easy for us to say, you play an NFL game, you don't need your left hand to throw right-handed, but there's a lot going on here.
The snap is interesting.
Yeah, we saw Will Howard a bit. He broke his finger and missed 8 weeks or whatever it was.
And the other strange thing too, guys, is it's not like the last play of that half for Rodgers was getting sacked or getting hit. It was a kind of an errant throw to Roman Wilson where they weren't on the same page, and they had to settle for the field goal. So talking to some players in the locker room afterward, first of all, they were all very hesitant to get into anything medical related, especially about their starting quarterback. But I mean, it sounded like it was starting to bother him at some point on that last drive. And I don't want the injury to obfuscate that he was playing poorly again until that happened. So whether it happened earlier in the game and he was trying to play through it, I don't know. But he was struggling mightily. It looked like a lot of carryover from that Chargers game, and it was concerning even before the injury there. But I still don't think they would go away from him just yet.
No, I don't either. I think Mike Tomlin has a history. He'll stick with the starter unless the starter can't play. Then it becomes Mason Rudolph. But then Will Howard is in a position maybe to play sooner rather than later. All right, let's talk about you could give game balls to a lot of guys. Ray, whose would yours be? Mine has to be Darnell Washington for what he did. He's now turned into a cult hero pretty much. How about you?
I was going to say Darnell Washington, but I'll go with Kenneth Gainwell. Jalen Warren had 62 yards on 10 carries. He gets injured in the third quarter, and Gainwell was tremendous. He came in, I think he had 66 of his scrimmage yards on that last drive, including the touchdown. 2 one-handed catches, big 30-yard gain to set up the final touchdown. He was really good in this game.
Especially after a week in which a lot of the chatter was, why isn't Jalen Warren playing more? Kenneth Gainwell's playing too much. And another weird injury situation where Jalen Warren he comes out of the game. He's announced as questionable to return while he's on the field ready to take a snap. Then the Steelers call timeout for a reason, presumably not because of Jalen Warren's injury, but call a timeout. And then doesn't return the rest of the game after that. So we'll see how that goes. But, as much as I was on board with the talk that Warren needed to play more after last week, you could see some of the things. You could see why Kenneth Gainwell, he has the eye of the coaching staff and he's a lot better than last year's sort of fringe. Cordell Patterson was Arthur Smith's toy last year. Kenneth Gainwell can actually do a lot of things to be productive for you.
All right, I'm going to get into spitting now because it's.
Well, I got to give a game ball to James Pierre, right?
James Pierre, that's another good one too.
He stepped up when you look at the last game against the Bengals. Maybe the tweak in the schematics and the fix was as simple as get Darius Slay and Juan Thornhill off the field, get James Pierre and Kyle Duggar on the field. I don't know if it's going to be sustainable because Duggar was benched in New England and James Pierre's been just a guy his entire career, but he's been playing really well these last couple games.
Back in the preseason, you would never have that duo on the field making plays at the same time, both with defensive touchdowns. So the spit thing is going to get a lot of topic here. Chris, start with you on this because the video seems to suggest that Jalen Ramsey is correct. We saw this happen in the first game of the year when Jalen Carter of the Eagles spit into Dak Prescott. He got basically a 1-game suspension. Is that the precedent? Should that happen in this case? And Jalen Ramsey, should he have even responded in that case?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. It seems like the league has set that precedent. It seems like the one view from the reporter from Cincinnati it looks pretty definitive. Now, I guess you could play it off as an accident or you're just talking loud. I don't know. But I can't judge intent. Nobody can. But it's pretty definitive. I mean, a lot of angles you couldn't see it. You saw it there. And if that happened, you would think that a suspension, that was strange because he didn't get suspended a game. It was like time served because he missed the entire game because that was in pregame warm-ups or before the game started. The teammates all had Jalen Ramsey's back. Yeah. They all, to a man, were pretty much like, that's disrespectful. I don't blame him. I do the same thing. And, it's, again, the heat of a moment when you're already sort of elevated emotionally and that happens to you. A lot of us probably would too.
In a different circumstance that really can hurt your football team, taking a penalty in that situation. But I think everyone in that locker room understood where he was coming from. Dak Prescott excluded. How many times do you see a player get spit on and not react in the way Jalen?
Well, I think anyone would react that way, right? Yeah. I mean, if that happened to any one of us walking along, I think you'd react differently.
It's easy for me to say because I didn't get spit on by someone today. But, it was a scumbag move by Jamar Chase, obviously, and even more of a punk move afterward to take questions and be defensive about it. No, I didn't open my mouth to him and asked again straight up, did you spit? He said, you spit? No, I didn't spit on anybody. So, it's by far it's worse what he did, but I do still wish Jalen Ramsey would have reacted a little bit differently, keep your head about it. He said, respectfully, it's not about football for me at that point. So these are alpha males that...
A couple extra words.
Right, yes, a lot of words we cannot use.
It took forever to edit his soundbite.
On this show.
Steve, our producer, said we couldn't get it on in time.
God bless Steve for navigating that Jalen Ramsey interview. But he was adamant, and the tape backed him up at the end of the day. But I still think you got to keep your head about you. And Brandon Echols had just come out of the game, so he was dealing with an injury too. They were fortunate he could go back in. Otherwise, they would have really been scrambling on the back end there. And, Ramsey just lost his mind.
There's 10 officials on the field. How did they miss that?
I don't know, Ray. The other thing, too, is I've seen people say, why wouldn't they go back and review that? To Chris's point, no one saw. There was no NFL camera angle. This was Austin Brisky of Cincinnati, Fox 19 or something, whatever, and he happened to be on the field and catch it, and that's the only way, really, that Ramsey is kind of vindicated here.
All right, we got to take a break on that note. Kyle Duggar also had one of the bigger plays, of course, a 74-yard pick six. And that changed everything because Cincinnati was driving. So the Steelers win. Next up is the Bears. We're going to talk about the next 3 games for both the Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens, who won today for the 5th game in a row. We'll talk about it next. All right, the Steelers still with a 1-game lead over the Ravens, who have won 4 in a row to get to 5-5. So In 3 weeks from now, it's going to be Steelers and Ravens. But Brian Batko, let's talk about what lies ahead, because for the Steelers, they got to go to Chicago. The Bears won again today on the road at Minnesota. They're 7-3. Then after that, they have a very tough game with Buffalo before the Ravens. Meanwhile, it's the Ravens with the Jets and the Bengals. So what do you see heading into that head-to-head?
The Ravens are going to win the next two. I feel pretty confident in saying that. I know they had some trouble today with the Browns, but that was in Cleveland in front of the dog pound. And obviously by the end, Shedeur Sanders comes in. And they did you see the fake tush push?
I thought it was a great call.
Incredible.
One of the best calls of the year.
Yeah, incredible that worked, and that's how they pulled that out. So I don't think they're going to have nearly as much trouble with the team that we just witnessed not be able to tackle the Steelers today, and then the Jets. So Steelers, I have a feeling they're going to split these next two guys, but you know this team, I mean, the way they play against the Bears, maybe I'll feel differently about having any chance to beat the Bills at home. The Bills were a buzzsaw again today against the Bucs, coming back, roaring back.
They did.
If they do split, it sets up a showdown in Baltimore in early December. And I think
sounds about right.
It comes down to that every single year. You know, the Steelers are going to host them in the finale, and I think we're probably going to have two meaningful games against the Ravens here in the final 6 weeks of the season.
I mean, Cleveland has a really good defense, so I guess I'll give them a pass on that. But I mean, you assume these wins by the Ravens. I get it, but you would have said leading into today, an easy win over Cleveland, right? Probably.
Yeah, and Joe Burrow supposedly wants to be back for that.
Yeah, it's too late for him to get involved. I wouldn't rush him, right? They're 3-7
at this point. Yeah, you'd almost protect him.
Unless he wants to get in. Yeah. Chase may be suspended too. Who knows?
Although he should be. He should be. Yeah. How about the Browns today? Myles Garrett went crazy. Devin Bush had a pick
How about
six
Devin Bush? Yeah.
Against Lamar Jackson. Yeah. They guess
took advantage of Cleveland's terrible offense.
Yeah,
That's pretty much
I
what
was
it
going
was.
to say they didn't have much trouble once Shedeur Sanders came in there.
I think you guys are right on. It's probably going to be 7-5, both teams heading into that first game against the Ravens. Ray, I want to ask you about the Steelers' defense. Is so reliant on turnovers, and good for them. They make them, big plays. They were physical today, but when they don't make them, they have trouble winning games. So why is that? Why can't they, win a lot of possession downs? Because they haven't really done that on a consistent basis on defense.
I mean, listen, the Bengals converted 2 3rd and 10 or longer today, so that's been a theme all season. And listen, if Kyle Duggar doesn't intercept that pass, and there's no way he shouldn't have, Flacco threw it right to him, but the Bengals were driving for the potential go-ahead score there. So it's clearly been a problem for the Steelers. They are not a great team in terms of holding teams down yardage-wise, but they are very opportunistic, and they got 2 touchdowns today. They did what they had to do, but you would like to see more consistency out of them.
It's kind of great because the Bengals, as bad as they are as a team record-wise, and as terrible as their defense is, and actually, if anything, it's a little alarming. The Steelers' offense didn't produce more against this that was giving up 40-some points to each of the last 3 games against bad teams. If you go back to the first Steelers game, for sure. But it is something. The fact that the Steelers' defense. The Bengals look more to, which they haven't really the last 3 weeks under Joe Flacco in terms of their passing offense. So, there's a lot that happened, but I think the splash plays are a big part of that. That was something that was missing in the first game against.
I thought the Steelers' defense played well today. The turnovers, just 2. We've seen them win games with 5 and 6, which I think is inherently a little more random or fluky or whatever we want to call it. But the second one, they didn't even necessarily need it. It just put the exclamation point on there. But yeah, I think Chase Brown rushed for 99 yards. He really only popped the one big one, the 35-yarder, and that didn't throw them off their entire game plan like it supposedly did in that first Cincinnati game. So, yeah, I give them credit for stabilizing things in the secondary has been the word that Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin have used going forward. I don't know that you can rest on your laurels with guys like Duggar and Pierre in there, and still going to see more of Brandon Echols. I think he still can be a liability at times, but Joey Porter Jr., he wasn't nearly as noticeable today in a bad way, and Jalen Ramsey is going to hold it down in the back end.
I mean, getting a 3-score win. It's not very often the Steelers get a 3-score win. For better or for worse, that Indianapolis game, they felt like it should have been, and they let them come back. They do that, and no matter what the Steelers, look at it this way, no matter what you talked about the Ravens game in 3 weeks, no matter what the Steelers do these next 2 weeks, at worst, they'll have a chance to be in first place after play that game against the Ravens for a chance to be at least tied for first place. At very, very worst, and probably, sole possession of first place, how it works out.
It's going to be interesting. It always is in the NFL. You never know what to expect, and we see strange results each and every week. When we come back, we're going to talk about the result from yesterday at Acrisure Stadium, where Pitt lost to Notre Dame and the implications it may have on Pitt and the ACC at large. We'll get into that next, right here on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. Pitt lost to Notre Dame yesterday, and it wasn't really even close. And even though the Panthers can still win the ACC, this loss will have some implications. So, Brian, I want to start with you on this one. First of all, Pat Narduzzi's comments seemed to really resonate in Notre Dame's locker room. They made that pretty clear. What did you think of the comment, and what do you think about that loss and how it will affect the ACC in general? Because there's no guarantee, even if you win that conference, you're going to get in the college football playoff.
He shouldn't have said that. I mean, I think that just came off as a team that didn't have much confidence in this game. And I know he said he kind of tried to backpedal a little later in the week and said, I just wanted to take pressure off guys. I don't like pressure. Well, since when? Coaches usually say they love pressure. That's one of the cliches that they spout. And he could have easily just said, yeah, every game is a must win. It's the next game on our schedule, so it's the biggest game. I'm not sure if he just slipped, had some truth serum before his presser on Monday, but I thought they looked like a team that wasn't quite ready for a game that big. And I don't think it's the end of the world, because I think Mason Heinschel probably needed to go through an experience like that to be ready the next time a big game comes. And oh, guess what? It's here this week against Georgia Tech, and it'll be here again
on the road
the following week against Miami.
There's certain tiers in college football, I think. You have teams like Indiana at the top, then you have teams like Notre Dame. And Notre Dame is clearly better than Pitt. Even if Pitt makes a run to the ACC championship game, they're not a threat to win a national championship. I think Notre Dame, their defense is really, really good. They actually might just be a quarterback away from being a contender. I just don't think their quarterback is good enough to carry them.
Yeah, he's a freshman, and he goes through the same stuff there. But Narduzzi, when you first heard it, what did you think, Chris?
I had to kind of double back, and I asked Jeff Hathorn, because if he's the guy to go to for everything, I'd what are the context of this? Is this getting blown out of proportion? Because you hear it and it said, I want to hear what the question was. I want to hear what the answer was. Was it, kind of taken? Are people running with it? Or might not? If they lose that game, it's the perfect thing to say, hey, that game doesn't mean anything. We still got everything in front of us. The ACC title and a playoff berth is in front of us. And so in that sense, he was right. And it makes sense. But it's also like, you're kind of selling yourself short. If our goal was to win the ACC, and I get it, that would be a great accomplishment, and they can still do that. But I mean, why sell yourself short? Why not to say we can be a top 10 team, we can play for a national title, whatever it is, and that certainly got diminished greatly by losing this game now, because they'll probably. I mean, it's a far-fetched scenario. The ACC champ wouldn't make the playoff, but
it can happen.
It's still theoretically possible.
It can happen. Let's say Pitt does it, but they look bad against Notre Dame. They lost to West Virginia. These kinds of things it's a subjective vote anyway. I mean, this committee is going to bring all of this into decision making.
Yeah, and then they didn't put their best foot forward in that game. To Ray's point, I mean, they needed to do everything right and have some breaks go their way to hang with Notre Dame. There was a pretty big talent disparity on display, I think. And, they had a chance that first drive. They get a drop kind of near the end zone, so that would have maybe given them the momentum that they needed. And then, it snowballed on them. I've seen them lose games worse than that. I've seen them lose games worse than that to Notre Dame and to Penn State in Pittsburgh. So, they fought back a little bit. They were somewhat resilient there with a fourth down stop, but they didn't have enough horses to win that game. And I think the Narduzzi thing probably just makes it a little bit worse.
And making the ACC title, and to his point, I guess he's trying to make, is making the ACC title game, which is right in front of them. Again, there's scenarios and tiebreakers and stuff. I guess it's not assured, but if they win these next two, they're in a very good spot to make the ACC title game.
Yeah, there's still excitement in this season. I don't think people will be shaking their fist about yesterday's result if they win these next two.
But they will if they don't get into a college football playoff because of it. And I think that's still out there on the table. We'll see how they do. But Georgia Tech's up next. They struggled yesterday, too. They maybe should have lost their game. And then Miami's been up and down all around. We'll see what happens in the ACC. Pitt, Georgia Tech next Saturday. In the meantime, when we come back, we're going to talk about a Penguin situation. It's not unlike a quarterback situation in the NFL. Do you go for the backup? Do you go for the starter? Who plays when everybody's healthy? Next. Hey, welcome back. If you're in the market for a new vehicle, don't settle for anything less than #1 Cochran Kia's clearly better car buying experience. You can enjoy exclusive clear-cut pricing where you get the most competitive offer and you get it up front. Take advantage of exceptional lease rates, finance rates, and choose from a lineup of hundreds of new models they have on hand. Experience clearly better car buying at #1 Cochran Kia, in-store, online, cochrankia.com. All right, Brian Batko, I want to ask you about the Penguins. May have a similar situation eventually the Steelers might have. Who do you go with? Because they have three goalies playing well. Jari will be back soon. Shelovs is playing well. And Murashov just got his first shutout. He's a young kid. What do you do?
Yeah, I was going to say, I guess somewhat similar in the sense that both positions. QB for the Steelers, goaltender for the Penguins have been kind of a pit of misery for the last
and most important position, really, on the
in
ice
the most
surface.
important position, the one that you kind of ride the wave and people have the biggest opinions about.
Exactly.
I think the difference here, of course, is Miroshov being a rookie and a young guy. There's a little bit more excitement. There's a little bit more juice that comes with that. But whereas Jari, I mean, he's been around and has struggled with this franchise, unlike some of the struggles that Aaron Rodgers is going through. But yeah, an interesting parallel, and I think it is easy to say, go with the young buck, whereas I was singing a different tune when we talked about Steelers' quarterback situation at the top.
It's been years, like we were talking about Jari. Can you cut him? Can you trade him? What can you do with him?
But he's playing well right now before his injury.
But you do need a youth movement with this team. I think it's a new era, and if there's a way to move on from Jari, I think they should do it.
I can't get over the pit of misery. There's an Alex Nedeljkovic way down there. There's a Justin Fields way down there. There's Kenny Pickett and Sheloves and Casey DeSmith. They're all down there in this pit of misery. It's quite a visual. Sorry.
Very interesting. I think it's going to be fascinating, but they're playing well. They won again today. They're coming home after splitting in Sweden with Nashville. Take a break. Come back with more right here. Thanks for joining us every Sunday on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. All right, before we go, a little prediction time for these gentlemen. Steelers, Bears next week. I think the Steelers will be underdogs. Chris, who wins?
And the Bears are a first-place team. We've seen this movie before, 09 and 17. It seems like a pit of despair for the Steelers, so they'll probably lose again. Bears will win by a touchdown.
No rhyme or reason, Bob, because they're not a consistent football team, but I'm taking the Steelers.
Yeah, Steelers haven't won in Chicago since '95, but there's really nothing that's the same about the Bears. So I don't really love those stats, but I kind of have the same gut feeling as Ray. Seems weird to say when we don't even know who's going to be under center, but probably tells you something about the way Rodgers is playing lately that I don't know that it affects my opinion that much. I'll go Steelers.
Yeah, very interesting. That game we'll have for you on KDKA, followed by 2 hours of postgame next Sunday. And that's going to do it for us. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next Sunday night. We're right here, same time, same channel.